Well, hello, everyone. This is Daniel Williams, Senior Editor at MGMA and host of the MGMA Podcast Network. We are joined today by Andy Swanson, MGMA's Senior Vice President of Product Strategy and Sales. Andy's going to cover a lot of ground today. He's going to talk about MGMA's strategy behind its face-to-face conferences, also the advanced strategy for medical practice leaders book series. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me. It sounds like a lot. I guess we'll get to all of it in due time.
We're going to try. So we're going to do our best. So first of all, I just want to thank you. I have not maybe formally thanked you for our listeners. 6 years ago, Andy took a chance on me. I was an old newspaper guy. I still had ink stains on my fingers. Andy saw something in me that maybe I could do podcasts, maybe I could do webinars. I'm not sure what it was, but Andy, thank you for that.
I think you're welcome. And it's been, we've been rewarded more so than you, I suspect, in this endeavor. But I think, Daniel, what it speaks to is MGMA's ongoing quest to find people like you and topics that matter most to our industry. And I think that's at the heart of what you and I try to do every day. And the folks who are listening, we need to understand what the problems are in the industry today so that MGMA can do our part as a not-for-profit that serves the industry to serve up the products and services that people need in order to get through their days and make it better. And I think I know you and I know that that's why we come to work every day. And hopefully we can, help our listeners, get through their day a little bit easier.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I can't believe it's been 6 years. I just got a notification on LinkedIn that it's been 6 years. Thank you. It just it flew by, and it seems like a couple of lifetimes, I think, because we mixed in the whole COVID thing. So yeah, sure. It's been neat. So I want to talk about something that we recently concluded. We'll start with the face-to-face events. You have a huge part in how those are designed, the strategy behind them. I know that we've moved the deck chairs a few times here recently. One of the things that I get really excited about is these spring shows, and that's our financial conference, our operations conference. We've just wrapped those up. I was with you in San Diego, didn't make the Chicago trip, but tell us the strategy behind those shows. What are we trying to achieve there?
Yeah, so these conferences are for our, I'll say, advanced practitioners or people who want to become advanced practitioners in any particular subject. Now, medical group finance is, about a mile wide, right? So, there's a lot that goes into that. In operations, similarly. But I think, these are conferences for, the leader in medical practice who spends their day in and day out in those arenas and wants to know kind of the pro tips. They want to know what's next in those fields so they can be the best finance or rev cycle or accounting person inside of a medical group or in the operations side. How does a practice administrator or an executive director or somebody who's running a clinic site as an office manager, how do they make sure they know the next thing they need to be focused on as it relates to, the finance of a medical practice or the operations facet? These are not for somebody who's just walking in. I guess if you've been involved in medical practice and you were promoted into a role, absolutely these things are great for you. But these are also for people that have been in the field for 20 years and they're looking for, hey, man, I'm going to go into a value-based care arrangement next week with this different payer, and I don't know what the reporting requirements are going to be, or how do I judge my baseline today from where I'm going to need to show progress tomorrow? It's new to me. I know it's not new to the industry, but it's new for my group, and I'm responsible for leading that. So how do I find the people who have already done it? How do I get up to speed fastest? How do I learn from others? And I think that's the genius of the face-to-face thing, right? Where it's not a didactic, I'm listening to a Zoom call where some expert and talking head is going to tell it to me, which is helpful, don't get me wrong. But I also want to then turn to the person who's sitting next to me and go, hey, have you already been through this? And can you give me what happened to you? And if you can help me avoid making a mistake that maybe you made, that would be super helpful for me. So I think that's where the genius of the face-to-face conferences in an in-depth sort of way in finance and operations comes to bear.
Yeah, you and I are part of a team that gets the proposals. We study those proposals, and I want to put a shout out to all of our listeners. Please, if you want to be part of this, we want to hear your voices. This is part of the directive of MGMA right now. We want this to be driven by the MGMA members, this content. So please submit those. We'd love those when you send them in. But as part of those, Andy, you and I are part of that team. We study those. Is there anything you're looking for down the road, whether it's a spring show, whether it's that leaders conference we're going to talk about later, or any of our other shows?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just talking to some press people about the cost structure of medical groups. And while compensation tends to go up slightly year over year, the cost structure of medical groups is going up significantly, outpacing, any one role's compensation and outpacing, the reimbursement we're all achieving. And so profitability is getting strained and compressed. And so I think the groups that are doing innovative things as it relates to adjusting their cost basis, it's hard to go achieve new revenue streams, although groups that are adding services, recently as we watch telehealth and now behavioral health get more integrated into multi-specialty groups, I think seeing case studies of where those things are being, both good for the community and good for the group, I think those are the things that I want to hear and I want to take nationally so that people can understand and learn from people. And then on the cost side, we talk at length about technology adoption, and it's a little bit of an older conversation now. And I'm not even talking about AI and machine learning and all that stuff, but I think it's the adoption conversation that we underemphasize. And in a place like a webinar or in a podcast or at a conference session, that's what I want to hear. I want to be told, like, yeah, we bought this technology. That's like a 2-second conversation, why we chose it, the benefits that we thought we'd gain. And then I want to hear 55 minutes about how we adopted it. What sort of benefits are we achieving from it? Where do we make mistakes in adoption and utilization of it? How do we adjust for those mistakes? So any stories our listeners have, that's what we try to bring forward in conferences. And I think that's what makes those events really powerful, is people can take home some like real operational adoption conversations about not just tech too, but these broader strategies about how to optimize their workforce.
Yeah, one of the aspects that I hear over and over again is the staffing side of it. We're going to talk about staffing, but if you do adopt a new technology and you have this constant staff turnover, so then what's the training to bring those people in? We've got an answer for that, don't we? We have a new conference, 2 new conferences that are coming up in August. Tell us about those. I had to actually look at notes to go, wait a minute, we have 2 August conferences. Yeah. This is new. Yeah. What's going on there?
Yeah, we're launching 2 new, what you said, our spring shows, our Finance Snobs Conference. We're going to launch them this year, and then we're going to run them again late in the spring next year. We've got our staffing conference, so MGMA focus on staffing, and then an MGMA focus conference on private practice. The idea with the staffing conference is twofold. One, we want to reach into larger medical groups or health systems who have dedicated HR people and start having an advanced conversation about what practicing HR inside of medical groups looks like, all of those challenges about how HR people get aligned with their business leaders, about workforce planning and retention. By and large, the HR function is responsible for sourcing talent and recruiting. That's great. Our business folks need to be engaged in that conversation, but by and large, it's an HR-driven activity. But then after that, compensation, engagement, morale, retention, onboarding, these are all business and HR partnerships. And I think that's where a lot of medical groups need some help in making sure that balance of partnership is equitable. HR is doing their part and the business leadership is doing their part. And so those are the things we're going to cover at the staffing conference August 15th and 16th outside of Boston. I'm excited. The other side of that is for practice administrators, those business leaders that I was talking about. You may be in a small practice where you don't have a dedicated HR support. You are the HR support. And so there's one thing that, all the practice administrators I talk to are making sure that they're in compliance with their local laws and federal laws. They're asking the right interviewing questions. They're ensuring the right compensation levels, legally. But there's, so much more than that. And I think most, advanced practice administrators, executive directors, CEOs, they understand that. It's once you get somebody in the door, How do you make them happy with the job that they're doing? How do you integrate them into the team? How do you make sure that they're a high functioning member of that team as quickly as possible? And so it's kind of it's not just an HR conference, it's that too, but it's also for these operators who operate largely without HR support. And how do we bring those conversations together? That's why I'm excited about, the number one thing is workforce management, right? I mean, it's how do I find them? How do I keep them? How do I pay them right? How do I get the most out of them? And I think staffing conference, we'll talk about that. Vice versa, private practices have a unique set of challenges. And it's not lost on MGMA that, the lion's share of practices today are in health systems and, getting less and less every day as PE, joint ventures and health systems kind of buy up practices. And so the plight of the independent or private medical practice is real. They have different challenges. And we want to talk about that specifically with them. And I think that's the exciting thing. A week later in Annapolis, Maryland, we'll talk about private practices in depth, talking to their owners, physician owners, who I always love talking to because they see both the clinical side and the administrative side of running a medical group. And they have definitely different challenges, different battles that they fight on a day-to-day basis. And so that's an exciting kind of area that we want to explore because that's what the industry has told us they need support with. And so we've tried to listen to our customer base and try to present two different options of additional places where people want to dive deep and talk to their peers about, how's it working for them. And so that's the advent of those two new conferences. We'll look forward to holding them in August and then again, probably next May and June.
Okay. That is so exciting. And the other thing that I am excited about, I know you are too, it's the Leaders Conference. It's going to be in October. It is going to be here in Denver where you and I are. That's pretty cool. So I love the Leaders Conference every year, but now we get to represent our home, So talk about that. What's going on in this particular Leaders Conference?
Yeah, so it's super cool. First of all, I believe it's our 99th Leaders Conference or annual conference as it used to be known. So that's super cool too, to think about an event starting in the early 1920s and still going on today. I think what's cool about the Leaders Conference this year, and we did a little bit of piloting on this last year when we were in Nashville, but we're going to really blow it out of the water this year, is we found success with what we are calling resource groups or affinity groups. So collections of people who identify in a particular way. Women in leadership is a good example of this. We collected almost 50 Black practice leaders last year who had the most amazing conversation in about an hour-long conversation. And every single person I talked to walking out of that session said, give me more people, more people who look like me, more people who understand the plight and challenges I go through as however I identify.
Right.
Because for me, working in a medical practice is different than the person I sit next to. And I talk to them about business issues day to day, but they don't walk in it from my shoes. And it's super helpful to talk to a group of people who walk in it from my shoes day to day. And so that's what we're going to do. We've established about 6 of these cohorts or resource groups, and we're going to collect the people, and then we're going to tee them up for some really great conversations, some of which MGMA will help drive, and some of which will be user-driven and attendee-driven. And I'm really excited to hear what those people want to talk about, and then reflect that back in the conversations that we're having at the Leaders Conference. I think more and more we know that didactic presentations, somebody speaking from a podium and just speaking at you for an hour is less interesting to most people. So how do we tee up the right couple of facilitators of dialogue in these sessions that have absolutely expertise to share for sure? Give them an opportunity to share it, and then let the attendees reflect in it, discuss about it, ask questions about it, and really have a more two-way dialogue with experts in the field about particular subjects. And by and large, I think the Leaders Conference is really about leadership. And whether you're leading a small team in a billing department or you're the CEO in a giant health system, leadership is leadership. And so how do we motivate staff? How do we engage staff? How do we make sure our team environment is great, the operating environment? We're after the outcomes that we're pursuing. We know the quality. We know the community needs that we've got. Like, leadership is a wide-ranging subject, and we want to make sure we're touching on all those kind of nuances of leadership again, at any level of leadership. But I think those are the things that we'll tackle this year. And yes, we're excited to be in MGMA's backyard here in Denver, Colorado. And it's going to be beautiful in October, by the way. So we're looking forward to seeing everybody at the Leaders Conference.
I cannot wait. And you spoke the truth. I mean, this is our commitment. I think our content is at its best when the MGMA members are part of that content, when they're driving those discussions. Anything you want to add to that before we move on to the next topic?
Just that we can't, when anybody says to me, hey, listen, your content was too rudimentary, or I need, the advanced level of this. My next question is, thank you for the feedback, and give me an example of the challenges that you're facing so that we can do a better job of finding experts who address those challenges. And so I love that feedback, because I love hearing where we can do better and get really at the heart of the nuance of problems. I was just talking to somebody about scheduling, and they were talking about, increase in productivity. And they said, oh, do you just shave 2 minutes off of every patient visit? And I said, first of all, I don't know anybody who's doing that. It might be an interesting approach. But second, no, our groups are super advanced. They're looking at a wellness visit differently than a new patient visit, than differently than, a follow-up. And all the permutations based on acuity level of the patient and the different, specialties that we're addressing. Like, this stuff is complicated. And so going 2 or 3 levels deeper into a problem to really get at the root of what is at that issue is what we need to be doing at MGMA. And then where we don't get it right, we need to be hearing about exactly, as we peel that onion to its core, like really what the challenge is and how we help people solve it, so we can build that back up in what we're talking about at these events. And you're right, we can't do that without people injecting themselves into that conversation.
Right. And we're going to shift gears to another medium, and that's books, because that's one of the things we're looking at in this new series, the Advanced Strategy Series for Medical Practice Leaders. Your fingerprints are all over this. I remember at our one of our locations talking years ago and hearing kind of the strategy behind building these out, and now we're beginning to roll them out. We have a financial management series edition that's already rolled out. It was debuted at our Nashville conference. We've got a human resources management edition that is coming out, or has come out already at our operations conference. And then we're going to culminate that with our operations management edition that will debut at our Leaders Conference here in Denver. Talk about the series writ large. Talk about what the strategy was behind that.
Yeah, I mean, everything at MGMA is somewhat predicated on our body of knowledge and our 6 areas of expertise for running a medical practice. And I won't say it's foundational or primary, but I think it's the basis upon which we build. And so those 6 domains include finance, HR, and operations. And there's also strategy and risk and compliance and governance. And what we found is finance, operations, and HR tend to be this voluminous chunk of knowledge, right? And we've got different people specializing in different aspects of each of those things. IT is a quintessential example of something in the body of knowledge that's contained in operations, but we all know it's a gigantic scope of expertise, right? So what we figured out is, the content that we've deployed as it relates to the body of knowledge in those 6 domains was good as a foundation, but not good for advanced practitioners. And so we said, well, what's next? How do we convey that which is more advanced, but all of these things do fit into those categories? And so what the presumption is that somebody needed the guide, the book, literally, on, I've been in HR in a medical practice for 5 or 7 years. I know the basics, and I've seen it from different angles, comp and ben, to talent acquisition, to leadership development and succession planning. And I've seen a couple of these different things from a couple of different levels. How do I really become a expert, a primary practitioner in any given one of those things? And that's the concept that the Advanced Series stems from. And so what you've seen in our already deployed finance and now HR book, and soon to be in our operations book, is, the guide for somebody who's been in the field but wants to take it to the expert level. And I think what MGMA has been told, again, by our customer base, our membership base at large is, listen, once I've been a new member for a few years and I've gotten kind of the easier to digest pieces of information, when I get to be a mid or advanced level careerist, how do I keep educating myself? What is the next thing? And so we've collected a series of experts. We've put it together inside of a document, in this case, a book. And I think what you'll find as you peruse some of those things is, if I've been in a revenue cycle leadership role for a while, there's something in there for me. If I'm thinking about being a rev cycle leader and I want to become a CFO or finance director, I will get a wider scope at the advanced level of understanding what the new job is for me, in kind of the textbook definition of how to perform that job in its highest and best sense. In the HR world, we go into kind of all those different things and then some that I already articulated. And if I'm an HR director on a site and I want to get to become a VP of HR, or I'm a VP and I'm thinking about becoming a CHRO, or SVP of HR services, like these are the sorts of things that those documents don't really exist. There's no place for me to go grab that expertise in one spot. And that's what we've endeavored to do.
Okay. Well, you not only helped design it, you actually wrote parts of the HR book. So first of all, what's it like to add author to your title in your descriptor, you know, in the icebreaker? Yeah, I'm also an author. Here's my book. What was that like? What was that process like? And tell us about it.
Fun and painful. I won't lie. It's flattering or maybe a little concerning that you've been around this long, that you can document some of the things you've learned over the years. But it's painful because it gets put through the ringer. Like, I talked to a lot of different HR experts and was edited by a lot of different HR experts so that we were bringing the very, very best to bear. And it's hard when somebody says, hey, just because you did it this way and you've seen it done that way, maybe there's a better way to do it. And to have that be presented in an editing process and then have that reflected in the published work, I just know it's going to bring the cream of the crop of content to bear. Because, you know, one person's view, one author's view, and this is why we had a number of different authors, you know, contributing to these things, is a really good way to represent kind of all the best practices. It's not one person's opinion of the best practice. It's a few different people, all who have expertise in the field. And that's kind of, you know, the old iron sharpens iron sort of thing, right? And like I said, that's a little painful to go through during the editing process, but I know it's going to bring a really high quality prop. And it's going to, that VP of HR who's already been in field for 15 years is also going to learn something from that piece of that piece of content.
Yeah. I want to shift gears one last time. This is something really cool because not only were you involved in that project, but you also, over the last couple of years, decided to get your fellowship. And so you walked the walk, so to speak, within MGMA's confines. One, what were you thinking? Why was it this the time to do it? And what did you learn about yourself and about being a fellow by going through that process?
Yeah, I mean, different than certification. So when you become ACMP certified, it's kind of just making sure that you know your stuff kind of broadly, right? Yeah. I know the different angles of medical practice, executive leadership, and that's, you know, through that process you learn where your gaps are, right? And it's important to understand what you don't know so that you A, don't speak out of turn, and B, you'll learn from the people that you need to learn from. And I learned a lot in that process too, through that understanding where my knowledge gaps were and then making sure that I, was able to address them, talking to different people, reading different things, and really brushing up on some skills that I had underdeveloped. In fellowship, the cool thing is you get to dive deep into the stuff that you're already really good at. And so, for those who are certified, I think fellowship is a way to present that which you kind of feel like you're an expert in, but need a little bit of the, somebody to kind of not just validate, but really kind of lift you up and show you that, hey, yeah, you know what you're talking about and you kind of are an expert in this. And I think that's the fellowship thing was more, certification was more of a, can I do it? I don't know. I wanted desperately to be sure that I understand kind of the full reaches of running a medical practice. But fellowship for me was more affirming, and really was like getting to show the expertise in growth in a particular area. And that's what I took away from it. And it was all of that. It was the process actually wasn't painful. It was more of it was like something you do as a professional hobby to kind of show how you have grown over time, what you've learned, and be able to reflect that back so other people might be able to learn from you as well. So writing a business case for me was pretty fun and pretty exciting. And I got to, show not just what I know, but kind of expand on that and think about how that might benefit, in this case, our enterprise and by and large, the industry at large. So it was fun. I enjoyed the process.
That is really cool. So the final question before we sign off then, what would you like to share? We have covered a lot of different topics, a lot of different mediums, but for our listeners, what would you like to share with them about MGMA, about their practices, about anything else? This is a blank slate for you, Andy.
I would say that the plight of medical practice leadership in any role is tough. And we're trying to find the really specific things that make it tough and help you with those. Where MGMA does a good job of that, I think people find a lot of value in their membership and the communities that we gather together, either face-to-face or online, and the content that we bring to bear to help people with those challenges. Where us all, as an industry, MGMA too, fall a little bit short in that is, how do we make the time to find that 10 minutes to sit down and really think about the one thing? Listen, if it were easy, we're smart people. We already would have solved these problems, right? So it's not 10 minutes and only 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes every day for 2 months, right? To really to chew on a really meaty thing and really come to something that's going to work for our team, our practice, our group of physicians, that's going to move the needle in an advantageous sort of way. That's tough. And so it takes time and commitment to doing that. And what I would say is MGMA wants to be a part of that journey for everybody. We're not always going to have the answers, but I know people. There are other MGMA members. And to the extent I can connect you with those people, where I don't have the requisite knowledge to solve the problem, I would love for MGMA to be the convener of those problem-solving conversations. And I think we're well down the way of building the forums to do that. And I want people to engage with those, because I think that's where things get frustrating and challenging, is when you're staring at a problem that seems it's been there for a really long time and it seems like there's no way out, and reaching out and spending some time talking to people who might have gone through a similar journey, I think is where a convener like MGMA can be really, really helpful to people. And that's what I'm hoping we're able to do.
All right. Well, Andy Swanson, Senior Vice President, Product Strategy and Sales at MGMA, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate the opportunity. It was great to talk to all your listeners, and I'll look forward to seeing them soon.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of MGMA's Insights podcast. Andy covered a lot of ground. We're going to provide direct links to the books, to the shows, to everything else out there that you may need to give you the resources to do your jobs better. Thanks for being MGMA podcast listeners.